Started. There you go.
They've got their whole clan going. I don't know where they're at, but.
What is up? They're gonna be late.
Yeah, I was like,
And we are gonna ridicule every single one of them. As they walk through the door, we're gonna review each one
I think
individually.
it's gonna be a little bit.
Shame. But happy Wednesday. Let's start with some good news.
we had a really awesome study with last week.
Cool.
It was really good.
Awesome.
We did seek the word, which kind of took the high points of each,
Cool.
went over it, and
Hey, what's up?
welcome.
Guys, I have great news. DJ isn't as late as he was last week.
Good news.
Welcome.
Sean was like, he said, he mentioned it earlier, he's not gonna shame everyone.
Yeah. See, I should not be shamed, I am.
So DJ doesn't start throwing guys.
Saw Cody and I.
You guys were still there when I left.
Yeah, so Cody and I were at. So Lauren's like,
It's
Cody
Cody.
this whole entire time, but like, I'm giving Cody.
Yeah.
I love. Cody. Don't tell Phil that, I love. Cody. And so.
Is this being recorded?
Okay. But she keeps on texting, and then Cody leaves.
Well, as one does, we're late.
And so Cody's like, I gotta go pick up, Pearl. I'm like, okay. And so I'm thinking he's gonna be here. And so then Lauren, I go outside, I get out there at like what? 7:54. No, sorry, 6:54.
I was gonna say, what?
Whatever, I get out there,
Like,
and then she goes,
it was just like.
why don't you come eat apple?
Beforehand.
And guess
Yeah,
what?
we were just working on it.
Fine. Guess who's here and guess who's not here? Okay.
A couple squabbles.
Yeah.
Alright.
Anyway, you're talking about your good plan.
Yeah, it was just a really good study.
Yeah.
We went through and he seemed to. Yeah, it didn't seem like there were any really speed bumps, he just was for it, so, it's not like written down or like in stone. It's kind of just like this understanding that we just meet up Fridays, so I need to confirm still, but I think we're set to do,
Thanksgiving dinner this Friday.
we're set to do that, yeah. We're gonna do some dinner, and we might do a little bit of, letting Jesus out.
Yeah. Nico and Jacob just disappear for a little bit.
Yeah, what happened?
Yeah. Coming back.
Ashley said
That's what we did at the birthday.
Yeah.
Ashley said that they've been really helpful.
Really?
Oh, good.
And she's appreciative of
Yeah.
that happening, so. yeah. Was it Friendsgiving?
I got a question, Sean. For Friendsgiving, do I have to buy everyone a gift?
No.
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 Do I just choose you?
You can buy me a gift. You'll be the only person to show up with a gift.
You can choose anybody.
It's Friendsgiving.
Yeah. It's just, it's like, yeah. Friendsgiving is just Thanksgiving among friends.
Thanksgiving with friends.
So, yeah, ask Pearl what to drink.
Yeah, for.
I think it's pretty much it.
You can make
Drinks.
desserts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, drinks and desserts.
You can bring the.
Hey guys, I made chicken. It's unseasoned.
Unseasoned and it's in veal
Bland chicken
veal
breast.
breast.
Any other good news?
It is, I actually, so there's been this girl, there's a bunch of girls at the gym that I just like, I see all the time, so I'm always like, I should just go and like introduce myself if I see them all the time. But the gym, I don't like talking to people there, so I don't, and always talk, it's kind of like when we talked about reaching out a couple weeks ago, like you want to so bad, you see them, and I swear like I'm about to do it, and then I don't, and then I'm like, dang, and I like leave. But I was going to fill up my water bottle, and as I was doing so, I realized I forgot my headphones in the locker room. And so when I was in the locker room, I was coming back out, and she was coming in and stopped at the mirror, and I was like, this is God. So I introduced myself, and it was cool. I mean,
What did you say? What was your opener?
excuse me, like, I always see you here at the gym, and you're an animal. And
You're an
you're an animal.
Anybody in the gym, it's automatically gonna create a bond.
It is, and I was like, I always see you squat, and then you're always, yeah, I tell her, I'm like, I always see you squat, and she's like, yeah, like, that's my strong suit, and then I was like, oh, yeah, my name's Lacey, and then we moved on.
Yeah.
And, but it's good news because, I don't know, I feel like that's a weakness of mine, of like, areas where I feel really close, like it's like my world. I don't really like to reach out to people in those areas.
Well, I feel like overcoming fear, I mean, we'll talk about that today a little bit, but like, just that, like. Yeah, I think. Reaching out is something that I think a lot of times we make it an event rather than just a lifestyle thing, so. Yeah. Any good news?
Less hours at work.
That is great news. Tell them how many days you got off, Lori.
So, well, because I'm scheduling everything, so, I had yesterday, today, tomorrow, I only work a little bit Friday morning. And then I also have Saturday and Sunday off.
Wow. Well, no, what happened? It's like every week.
It's almost like you're like working part-time again. I think I hear our gaggle of late people.
Stop making late people feel bad.
You should make it feel bad.
Jacob is
Nico.
literally standing
They're
at the
about to
door.
come in because.
Just staring at, shaking his head.
We have good news.
Go for it, Nico.
We started
go.
making friends that weren't you guys, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
No, the new guy at work, there's a new guy at work that I've been training and I've been getting along with pretty well. And we went and spent Saturday morning with him and his friend group. They had like a breakfast and board games thing. And so we packed up the kids and went, and there was another family there with kids, like almost exact same age. And yeah, it was just a good time. He might be coming to Friendsgiving. We're hoping his wife would come, but she is
With,
out of town. So, what'd you say?
Did you check with Pro to make sure that's okay?
No, I made sure that to invite his entire friend group, so it's possibly like another 15 people. And
I don't think our house can host.
if it comes down to it, we'll just stop at Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that. We'll grab McDonald's or
Yeah.
bucket of KFC.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get try to keep them KFC. But yeah, that's awesome. That's like, I feel like breakfast and board games is not something I would think like. There would be a group that does breakfast and board games. I'm like,
Honestly, it was like a great time and everything. I don't know why we haven't done it before. It might be implemented in the Portillo household. So
Breakfast and board games.
breakfast and board games.
I'm just saying, I don't want to get syrup on any board games, so.
You eat and then you play board games or play garage or rock band like they had.
We definitely did that one time. We had church at your house, and then we had breakfast, and then we played board games.
Yeah. Yeah. We stayed there all day. That was amazing.
Oh yeah, we did do
Any
something like
other-
that, didn't we?
Any other good news?
Me and DJ worked out together.
Yeah, I
We
heard.
heard about it.
We heard that.
I was about to
He
say,
actually
who
said,
more?
he said that was his bad.
Whoa,
No, he said that's why he was late.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did you guys work out for?
Cool.
I'm gonna say.
Oh, there she is.
Late.
Hey.
Hey, listen, wait, but.
I
Only-
made it, I did good.
Welcome. Ashley, what's your good news? Good.
Oh my baby, he's like 11 pounds now.
Wow.
I know, and he has a cute head. He's not my baby. I mean,
Well, I have a ton of good news. Lacey and I went to Lexington on Sunday. We had a great time. Just, I mean, it's 2-hour drive or whatever, but it was great to like connect with the church there. Her friend came in from Louisville, and so we got to grab dinner with her. And so, yeah, it was just, I feel like for what looked like a lot of time investment and effort and energy, I think it was just really refreshing. So, yeah, that was awesome. And then there's something else that I was thinking about. I forget what it is. I have so much good news, I forget about it. So, whoa, that's what it was. We have probably the most amount of people that we've had at midweek ever. Like, that's pretty great. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, like, I feel like we've been kind of talking about kind of redoing our culture, and we've been talking about this for a while. So we're like, I feel like it's cool to see our community all together finally. So kind of, you know, we're still missing Garrett, so.
We'll all be together Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you had a whole meal prepared for it, like, you know, different.
I was one of those.
Yeah.
You guys, I was like, you would never do those.
Keep praying. Sometimes the things that you pray for, you're actually meant to answer your own prayers, and so think about that. But before we dive in, let's go to God in prayer. Dear Father God, Dad, I am so grateful, God, to be together, and God, to have the family together. God, we are a raucous and noisy group when we're all together, and there's just that buzz, that energy, God, and it's just great to be with each other. God, I pray that as we look at your word, and as we talk about asking questions and developing deep relationship, God, I pray that you guide us in this area. God, I pray that you help us to connect with the people who are around us and help us to really add this to our toolkit. God, I love you so much. I pray all of these things according to your will. Amen. So we are closing out our midweek focus on relational evangelism. Believe it or not. It's like, whoa, we're there. But we're going to be talking about the art of asking good questions today. And so far we've talked about the need for rest and Sabbath, the beginning stages of showing God's kindness, building a friendship, and now we're shifting into kind of the hard part, right? This is the part that we were all like, they had those 99 questions that were like, how did 9/11 affect your faith? How do you work that into a conversation? Like, it's a random conversation starter, I guess. But once you've built a friendship with someone, how do you take that relationship deeper? That's what we're going to talk about today. By the way, we started up our YouTube channel last Sunday. We didn't go live because didn't have permission. Well, it's up. It is up. So from YouTube, apparently you need to request permission to go live. Didn't know that one. Good to know. But so our Sunday service is up. And Garrett did a great job with actually like using OBS and getting everything. It's like, it kind of looks cool. But on top of that, I uploaded all of our midweeks too. So there are multiple different playlists. You can kind of go through and see all of them. Nice. Anyway, and so we're talking about how to take that relationship deeper. And once again, all of these steps build off of each other. So we start with showing people God's kindness by serving them. And then we move to building a relationship through listening to them and genuinely hearing what they're saying. And then we continue to, on top of that, we add on the next level of asking questions. And that's what helps deepen the relationship. And the goal at each stage is just to simply love that person in the most appropriate way for the relationship. It is weird to ask like a stranger just to come over to your house and talk about God. I'm trying to look everywhere other than right there. from that. But it's- it- it's, those are things that make people feel uncomfortable, right? And I think what's great about what we've been talking about is it's appropriate for where the relationship's at. With a stranger, just a short interaction, something that's, there's no strings attached, there's no expectation for them to respond. Those things are perfect for helping them to see who God is. Once you start to actually interact with them more, you start up a conversation, like listening to that person is the most appropriate way to love them. And so as we talk about deepening a friendship, it's coming from a place where we've already compassionately listened to the person that we're talking to. Like they already feel like, wow, this person is a safe place where I can share who I really am, and they're not going to judge me for it. Right? That's the starting spot. And so point number one is the art of asking. Oftentimes the needs that we see, the things that people communicate are just the tip of the iceberg of what is going on in their life. Right? What happens is we look around and we see all these people who are super successful, well off. It seems like nobody around us has any problems. And that's because all we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg of their life. And asking good questions is the way that we get to see the depth of what they're really dealing with. It's not until you start asking somebody like, hey, how's your roommate situation? That all of a sudden, now all of the baggage that they have with the roommate comes to the forefront, and you're like, oh, I thought it was great because you've never talked about it. Right? It exposes the assumptions that we have about people and where they're at. Asking good questions actually starts with the assumption that there's more happening than what is being communicated. That people have stuff that's going on that we're unaware of. I think we understand this concept. If anybody's ever talked to a teenager, you go, hey, how was your day? You go, fine.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I think there's more than it was fine. Like, right? You start to dig more, you start to ask more questions, and all of a sudden, like, they have a whole story about how their day was, but initially they're like, it's fine. Right? And I think what happens is that with people that we don't fully know, we settle for that surface level rather than digging deeper. Like if our best friend walks up to us and says, you're like, hey, how was your day? And they go, oh, it was fine. We don't just move on.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lack of compassion and caring for that person if we just skip over that and go, oh, okay, hey, you said it was fine, And so we get stuck with strangers, we get stuck talking about the trivial because we filter out questions that we would normally ask. There's a level of depth that comes with having a relationship with someone that we ask a different set of questions. Any deep relationship asks questions that are specific and vulnerable. The difference between a shallow and a deep relationship is not the vulnerability of what is shared, but the vulnerability of the questions that are asked. And you can see that, right? If you think of like, how was your day, right? With someone that again, they're like, oh, it was good. Cool. Like, what did you get into? Did you do anything fun? I have this with people who I'm reaching out to. I text them and I'm like, hey, how was your weekend? You didn't notice I text them. But some people are like, it was fine. Okay, well, did you do anything fun? Like, what? And by asking more questions, there's more depth, there's more. I had one guy who I texted and he was like, yeah, my weekend was all right. I was like, oh, why just all right? Like, oh, I had like the thing I had with some girl like ended. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, what happened, whatever. And like, ended up finding out all of this stuff that happened over the weekend that if I had just taken what he said at face value, I would have missed out on knowing what happened over the weekend. Like, he had this significant emotional thing that happened that he just, like, it wasn't something that he's like, hey, let me just dump this on you. Like, asking questions at some point, shifting from listening to asking questions, it shows that we care. That we genuinely want to know who that person is. In conversations, we often skip over areas where we can ask simple questions. Like, it doesn't take a lot to ask one question, get an answer, and then start to ask questions that are like, each part of what somebody says, there can be questions that you can ask about, right? So you're like, hey, what did you do over the weekend? Oh, well, I went home, and then like me and my family went out to dinner, and then after that, like, we watched a movie. Oh, where did you go out to dinner? Like, how was being at home? What movie did you watch? Like, all of those are questions that help to build depth in a relationship. Yeah, none of them are like super spiritual, like, whoa, but all of a sudden you find out that somebody watches a movie with their family every Saturday. You're like, wow, that gives you a bigger perspective on who this is and what their life looks like. And so we have to drop our filter for the questions that we ask. And in doing so, we actually get to know the more specific questions that give depth to a relationship. Like, your best friend, you can walk up, trust me, I know, like, I can walk up to a person and I know when the last time we talked was. I know, like, I'm asking about how his marriage is, I'm asking about how his family is. Like, I know the questions to ask him because I know him. I know the specific things, like, he's a Steelers fan. I know to ask him about the Steelers. Like, I know the different things that we connect on. And with people that we haven't gotten to that depth yet, it's just a matter of asking the questions to find those things that we connect on. Good questions should be open-ended and non-threatening. They dive deeper without making the other person feel manipulated. And that seems like a very simple, like, yeah, no, duh. But it's real, like, watching how people react to certain questions tells you a lot about how they're feeling about the question. The goal is not to sell anything or convince anyone of anything. It's to start the process of them thinking about what we're talking about. Like, to start thinking about how God affects their life. Over in Philippians 2, Philippians 2, starting in verse 3, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should not look to your own interests, but also to the interests of those around you. We look not to our own interests, but to the interests of the people we are building a relationship with. Right? And asking good questions, we're thinking about the individual and thinking, what do they need? Right? How can I connect better with this person? Like, we're putting their priorities first before our own. We want to study the Bible with everybody, but we can't force people to study the Bible. All we can do is ask questions and draw the heart and slowly guide them towards God. A good question is not a tactic for you to share your solution. I think oftentimes when we ask a question and then someone responds and then we say, well, here's what I think. It feels manipulative. It feels like you just wanted me to respond so that you could share what you thought, right? Asking a good question. It's about genuine curiosity that allows God to begin moving their heart. It's opening up a space for God to work on them. And so asking good questions requires us to be really, really good at reading how people respond. Like we have to be able to tell when they shut down, when we need to go deeper, when we need to back off and allow God's spirit to work. Like all of those things require discernment, and it requires a level of patience that I think we're not used to in conversation. There's this quote from the book that says, if the body of Christ wants to succeed in reaching today's world, we need to learn to ask higher quality questions. Christians have already proven that we enjoy giving answers. Unfortunately, we are often answering questions nobody is asking. Outstanding questions stimulate great thoughts. Some people feel called out. The goal isn't to change people. It's not, our questions are not going to change people. God is going to change people. And so the goal is to help them move 1% closer to God. The goal of all of this is to just slowly move them towards God. People don't need our solutions. They need honest and safe relationships that accept them for who they are. Like that is what people crave, is a relationship where they can be honest about where they're at. Somebody else can be honest about where they're at, and they can have somebody that they feel like, wow, I am in the fight with you. And so by asking good questions, eventually people will get to the point where they're ready to study the Bible. And so we finally get to sit down and actually study. What's amazing about going through this process from beginning to end, showing God's kindness, building a friendship, deepening the friendship, by the time that the person gets to study the Bible, we already have a relationship that they need in order to actually study the Bible. Like studying the Bible is a gauntlet. You don't go through studying the Bible and go, I do that every Tuesday. Like, no. We had rugby, we had Thunderdome. It was literally like, it was 3v3, and you just beat the crap out of each other. Like, it was brutal. But it was like the point, it made us better. And so what's great about the process is that once people build all of these relationships, by the time that they get to studying the Bible, you already have enough of a relationship. You know their life, they know your life. Like there's a level of trust that's built that isn't there when it's just, you meet somebody on the street. And certainly we're going to meet people on the street who want to study the Bible, and we'll continue to study with them. But that these people have the relationship they need to actually face the truth and change their life. And so to put these things in practice, there are 5 mindsets that we need to lean into and 4 mindsets that we have to avoid.
That's 9 mindsets.
That's 9 different things. Get ready for it. And so my point number 2 is missional mindset. Over in Acts 8.
Is that one of the 5 or are we having 9 more points?
Yes. You're getting 9. You're getting 9 thoughts. Acts 8. So Acts 8, this is coming off of Stonian and Stephen, right? The church, Stephen gets stoned, great persecution breaks out. And it says starting in verse 1, on that day, a great persecution broke out against the church at Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him. But Saul began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off men and women and put them in prison. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. We want this to be how the church operates. Not the persecution.
Drag them in the street. Drag them down in the street.
But that we come together on Sundays, right? And then we willingly scatter throughout the week. And we take the gospel with us. We take God's kindness with us as we go. That's how the kingdom was designed to advance. You know, up until this point, the church had very intentionally stayed within Jerusalem. And God says, no, get out of here. You're going to Judea, Samaria, and all the ends of the earth. You have to get out of Jerusalem. You guys have to go and scatter. And that's the model that we're meant to follow. And so we have to take these 5 mindsets with us as we go. Rebecca, get ready to write.
Oh, mindful mindset wasn't one of them.
No.
Dang it.
Number 1. Number 1 is kindness. That we have to be defined by kindness. Lacey apparently is going to memorize all of these. Kindness.
She had you, I mean, she had.
But number 1 is kindness. We have to be defined by kindness. Or in our interactions, we have to have kind interactions with people. In our assumptions.
Is that the second one?
No, this is all.
Oh, okay.
I'll number them. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry. But in our assumptions have to be kind. You know, in our actions have to be kind. We should constantly be thinking of ways to be kind to those around us, because that's what Jesus did. Amen. Jesus was constantly thinking of others and putting their needs first. You know, our discipleship boils down to WWJD.
Are you gonna go with E?
What would Jesus did?
Yeah, there it
That
is.
was-
But Jesus is the standard for what our lives should look like. And so the same kindness that he lived his life with, we choose to live our lives with. Number 2, second mindset is fun. Like, we should have so much fun with the things that we do. Church on Sunday should be like a wild party. We're actually, for our next semester, we're going to start up Monday night. We're going to do kind of a Devo and dinner. So like short little lesson for the campus. We're literally calling it Power Hour. Because the idea is, we're going to take 1 hour and the Spirit is going to come on this place. What? Yes. We're working on having. We're working on having. Yeah. I'm glad to see that your discipleship is not guided by, your lordship, but by your stomach.
You gotta have that food.
But so everything we do should be fun, right? There should never be like a lame church service or like a lame getting together of the disciples. Fun is a mindset that we bring into all situations. That's something that happens when the stars align, right? Fun is not a ball pit. Like, it's not like you go to Chuck E. Cheese and the ball pit's so much fun. Fun is something that you bring to Chuck E. Cheese. You bring to that ball pit. It should define who we are and how we approach life. Like, fun should be the way that we see everything that we do. Mindset number 3 is to be outrageously generous. Over in Matthew 6, verse 33 says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. You know, that we'll never know if that is true unless we are outrageously generous. It says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. All these things are food, shelter, money. Like, it's all the things that pagans chase after. And we talk about that scripture, but do we live it? You know, do we end up chasing after all the same things that the pagans chase after? You know, what defines our life? We choose to be outrageously generous because God is outrageously generous. And he richly rewards those who step out in faith and imitate him. And so in our interaction, this isn't just about money. This is about everything that we do should be outrageously generous. That, man, if I'm going to have a conversation with somebody, I'm going to be locked in. I'm going to give them all of my attention. Because that's what God does. God gives me all of his attention. Like, when we pray, literally heaven stops. Heaven stops when we pray. There's a psalm about that. Like, that's like the alarm bells sound. And everything stops. That's how intimately and like passionate God is about our prayers. The fourth mindset is the mindset of humility. You know, the work of seeking and saving the lost cannot become about us. Can become about what we're building, our church region, our church like it can't be about us. We are the tool, God is the artist. And that goes both ways. You know, we have no ability to affect people's hearts. So we need God to move people's hearts. On the flip side, we have no right to refuse the work that God has given us. We are not entitled to dictate how God's kingdom advances. Whether we want to push it this way or we don't want to move it at all. We have no right to say, this is how I think God's kingdom should advance. He leads, we follow. You know, the only raw material that God uses to build his kingdom is broken, fallible people. So if we're not willing to be broken, if we're not willing to understand our worth before God and our complete worthlessness before God, we're not able to understand that, we're of no use to God. Mindset number 5 is prayer and worship. You know, prayer and worship should fuel our lives. We are called to pray and worship continually in all circumstances. We should pray for opportunities to be used and praise God on the back end when he does use us. You know, that worshiping is how we give God credit. Because again, it's not about us. And so those are the 5 mindsets that we need to lean into. With that, there are 4 mindsets that can hold us back. The first one, as we talked about earlier a little bit, is fear. You know, truth separated from experience remains eternally in the realm of doubt. Meaning that if we don't actually walk out what we believe, there's no weight to what we say. Because there will constantly be a nagging voice in the back of our head that says, well, you've never actually done that. Right? You've never actually experienced that. You know, the point of all of these midweeks is to help create an entry ramp that removes a lot of the barriers for our evangelism. That it's meant to give a clear picture of what it looks like to go from stranger to disciple. And there's a clear kind of direction with it. But the reality is, if we don't choose to put our fear to the side, nothing's going to happen. Nobody gets baptized unless we take steps of faith to overcome our fear. Our faith is a lifestyle. It's not a class that we take. It's meant to be lived, right? It can't just be intellectual knowledge. We have all 4, you know, these 4 stages now, and it's like, it gives us a shared lexicon or whatever you want to call it, but shared words to talk about, right? Talk about moving people along. But if that's all it is, if it's just shared words, it doesn't have any impact. It's not helping anybody. You know, the second mindset that we have to get away from is having an events-based view.
Mouthful.
Yes.
It is.
Events-based view. Yes. That meaning that if our view of evangelism is I do it when we do stuff, right? Oh, Devo. I do it after Devo, or I do it before Devo. Bible talk. I reach out before Bible talk, right? Or I reach out for Croctoberfest. Croctoberfest is dope. But if that's how we view evangelism, it's not consistent enough to actually see results. Evangelism has to be a daily habit. That every time we're interacting with people who are pre-disciples, we should be thinking about how to show them God's kindness. Right? When every cashier that we interact with, every waiter, every person on the street, like the people in our jobs, it should be a constant awareness of the people around me and how can I show them God's character. You know, the daily habit is what makes the events great. Church on Sunday sucks if nobody invites people. And that doesn't happen if we do an event, right? If we do a big kindness outreach event, or like as we plan the spring calendar, as we plan these different events, if we don't have collective effort in the day-to-day, then our events are going to be awful. Like we're all going to show up, and it's not because our events are going to be awful because we don't interact with people. It's because we don't have an attitude of, I'm going to be kind to everybody I'm around. You can't fake it. You can't come and show up to an event and think, I'm going to be kind to people when 95% of the time you're not. Like, it doesn't work that way.
They're calling me out.
We have to have this daily mindset of, I am going to be a light to the people that I'm around. And that actually makes our events so much more impactful, not because of the people that we're impacting, but because our hearts are different. Like it changes us more so than changes what we do. The third mindset is a me first mindset. Somebody was convicted by that one. Self-centeredness is the death of all things heavenly. You know, our outreach requires us to think outside our own situation and to consider others. And all we do needs to reflect the servant heart of Jesus. Jesus was not self-centered. Jesus was God-centered. You know, the reality is that our excuses do not change what God calls us to. You know, we can have a whole list of reasons why, well, I can't go reach out because I have to go and I have to catch up on Netflix and I have to, I have to make sure that the dishes are clean. I'm not saying don't do dishes, but we can come up with all of these lists of excuses for why we're disobeying God and forget that we're disobeying God. And so we have to get away from a me first mindset. And the last mindset that we have to avoid is apathy. Apathy is just a fancy word for self-centeredness. It's a fancy word for my priorities are misaligned and I don't care about it. The Coast Guard every year, they spend roughly $16,000 on the average search and rescue operation.
How much?
$16,000. Wow. That's quick math that I did. Don't quote that in the papers. But that's paid for by the taxpayers, not by the individuals. We all actually pay for that. You know, that's a pretty high cost. I have never paid $16,000 for anything in my life. So, full disclosure, well, maybe. Kind of. But that's a high cost. But what they say, and as I was looking up articles, they say this, is that they understand that each life is worth way more than the $16,000 that it costs to go get them. That each life to them is valuable. They're like, we don't care what the cost is. If we have an opportunity to go and save somebody, we're gonna go do it. And their numbers are like ridiculously high. They have somewhere right around like 40,000 people require the Coast Guard to come save them every year. And right around their numbers are right about 600 people die. And 2/3 of those people die before they're even sent out. That's actually really encouraging. 40,000 people, 600, I mean, percentage wise, like they're remarkably good at what they do. You know, spiritually speaking, we are the Coast Guard. We are the people who are meant to look and say, that's a high cost, but that person is worth it. You know, the people around you need you to be a disciple. They need you to be faithful. And every minute that we spend looking at the high cost of discipleship is another minute where untold millions are dying untold. You know, we can't tolerate apathy towards the lost around us. Like that is a cancer that grows in our heart. That neuters our impact for the kingdom. And so we have some discussion questions as we close out. We ended with all of the negative things.
Yeah, right.
But question number one is, what roadblocks do you run into in building deep relationships and asking those deep questions? And then, do you see the 5 missional mindsets in your life? And do you see any of the negative 4 mindsets in your life?
You wouldn't care. You're reading those questions.
Yes, repeat the question.
Yes. What roadblocks do you run into in building deep relationships? Do you see the 5 missional mindsets in your life? And do you see any of the 4 negative mindsets?
Yes, to the fear one. I don't have time, and sometimes with the 5.
And she answers a phone call.
Yeah, your answer.
Any thoughts?
Sean, she's ordering.
That's okay. I'm ready.
I already fucking that one out. That is not by her word.
I think for me, what roadblocks do I run into building deep relationships? Just answer the other 2 and don't probably fall. I think realistically, the bad mindset is I can be very, but I feel like sometimes I can get into me first attitude. I'm a pretty selfish person, so I will benefit, like I will help up until it no longer benefits me. So I feel like, and with that, like the mindset to have that kind of takes out, I think that's why I struggle with humility. It's hard to care about other people when you're doing yourself first. So I think that can sometimes be a roadblock in my relationships, because I feel like I'll give up until I start being affected, and then I'm like, okay, I can't do it anymore. And I think there's some part of that is like when we talked about last week with codependency. I do think like that's an issue too, with codependency, but I think it like kind of goes with what we talked about with listening last week and codependency. And then also I think it's like, I think the me first attitude and the codependency like feed into each other a little bit. Yeah. That's be rude. But yeah, so I think
defensiveness that we talked about.
So yeah, I just think I don't have all the mindsets, but I think the bad mindset feeds into the good mindset that I'm supposed to have.
To be fair, we all failed as a group last week. I guess it was great. It was just crazy.
I feel like I struggle with like having fun. I just take stuff so seriously. Like seriously, I take stuff so seriously sometimes that I just can't like let myself relax and actually enjoy time. So I always feel like there's somewhere I need to figure like time management, usually like yeah, I just feel very fun.
I feel like time takes creativity too. I don't have. When somebody else creates a good time, I'm there for it. I'll get into it, but I think it's just something. Hard to think of. That's
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny, I think. Kids have a blast with it. Like they just find any way to like make something fun. And, you know, I mean, you strap a kid into a car seat and leave them there for however many hours, they'll just pass out, whatever, but they don't really have tons of fun, but. So what you're doing to the kids that you're putting in car seats, but
Usually don't leave it in the car. Car seat.
whatever.
I assume you're
Alright,
on a road trip.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for thinking it's killing me. Thank you for that. I'll leave the work on that first one there.
You're bad.
Anyway, like I was saying, certainly there are times that kids don't have a play. But I feel like, for the most part, like, you just let a kid out in the field and they'll find a way to have a blast. And I think that's one of those things that we unlearn as we get older. We like become less, I think we just become more and more aware of like other people are watching and like.
Visual.
But I think we all have that spark in us. That I think we can find. I think it does take effort, you know. Yeah.
I agree. I think there's a level of creativity and innocence a child has, exploration. They don't know what anything is. So anytime they explore something, they're like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It could be terrible, but it's awesome to them because they don't know.
Yeah.
And they're just so creative in their minds. And I feel like as we get older, we just get trained. And all we think about when we get older is I'm gonna go to work, I pay my bills, I can have fun, work 2 days of the weekend, and then go back to work, it sucks all week. And you have this understanding as if you've already explored everything in the world the rest of over. You don't. God created a massive world, so they're exploring so much stuff.
Yeah. Man, now I'm trying to think of how to make paying bills fun.
Especially your life doesn't get.
Yeah, that's just so.
Big bets, making bets.
If it's time consuming.
Yeah.
Like,
I think on the roadblock question, I feel like what roadblocks I run into when building deep relationships, they often boil down to insecurities in myself. Whether that be, because getting deeper with somebody means you have to, typically you have to be the one starting that off, being the one being vulnerable, being deep, because that insecurity of what they don't like, what they don't accept me. But if this whole relationship I've been trying to build goes to crap once they find out who the real me is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or stuff like that. Or even like, I never, I've been talking to,
Well done.
yeah. I've even been talking to, like, it's hard for me to, I feel like it's hard for me to make new friends, be along with people, and be fun and be funny. Because maybe this is because I hang around military people, that's my job, so maybe that's part of it. But I feel like every conversation is joking about alcohol, being very crude about women, and it's like, I don't feel like I can make friends with people because that's all they talk about.
No.
I don't want to talk about this, you know? So
I think it's.
I feel like that's also another roadblock I run into, like, how do I talk about God with people like that?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to understand and initiate that situation without them thinking, this dude's weirdo. Anyways, back to the alcohol.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like,
I don't feel that problem here. I'll get as long as I understand.
well, we appreciate it. Yeah, it is, it's like, especially in a group setting, I feel like it's tougher to. David, you moved your head back right in front of my face. It was literally like it was intentional.
I know, I like you did it, and I was like.
Yeah.
You go forward, I had to go- I didn't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's especially difficult in a group setting. Like, you're like, now I'm not only being vulnerable with one person, but with many, like with a ton. And each relationship is at a different spot. And I think that's one of like it was funny reading the chapter. I never thought of vulnerability and asking questions before. Because it's like, there is a different level of vulnerability to asking, like, you like ask somebody like, hey, how's your family doing? And they may go, yeah, that's weird, like.
Literally.
Now you feel bad.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it does. It exposes different things in us that I think are good to work through. Like, I think it's, ultimately, I think it exposes areas where we can be refined and continue to grow. Yeah, I can relate. You can relate. Did you just fist bump yourself?
I was trying to fist bump you and then you
Any other thoughts?
I think the fear is the roadblock in my life, because like I look at apathy and like, no, I'm not apathetic. I think I care. I have too much empathy. Like I just, and so that's when fear comes in, because I don't want to get hurt, or it is just hard to feel like you're carrying the weight of other people on your chest. Like it's really exhausting to do that. I haven't yet like found the balance of how to care without it destroying me and how I feel, because I just take other people's pain very personally, because I care a lot about people. So I just fear fear vulnerability, I guess. But then 5 mindsets to lean into. I thought your point about humility was cool, like being broken down to be made stronger. Like if we're the body of Christ, that's what a human body does. You get broken down in order to be made stronger. That's how muscles work, that's how bones work. Like it's just restored and get made stronger. So in order for God to make us strong, like we do need that humility and that brokenness. But that's a hard balance to find, because it's like, how do you maintain humility while still having fun? Which I think sounds, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but it's like, how do you maintain humility while still being like, I'm awesome. God says I'm awesome. He thinks I'm awesome. So I'm gonna live life to the fullest because I'm great in his eyes. Like, how do you maintain humility while being confident in who I am, because God says that I am that? Which that might take humility in itself. Like, it's not me who like is saying that I'm great, it's God himself. So it's not anything that I do that makes me great, it's God. But I feel like a lot of these are conflicting, but also go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Humility is ultimately like pride pushes yourself up so that you look better around others. Like insecurity pushes yourself down in the hopes that people will pull you up. Humility just lifts other people up. And I think like it is. I was talking to Jackson about humility the other day, and I think humility speaks reality. Like, I knew for me, walking onto a rugby field, like, I knew that I was easily one of the top 5 players on the field. Like, I just knew, I knew the majority of people hadn't played as long as I hadn't like gone through, like, I just knew. And so I don't think it's, I think there's a right way to both understand who you are before God and understand that what you are is not what makes you great. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tricky, it's such a completely different mindset than I think pride and insecurity that I think it's tough to put words to.
yeah. No, I like what you said about humility lifts other people up. Cause that's fun. It's fun to lift other people up.
Yeah,
So in turn, you're like pushing yourself down so that you can do that. So,
yeah.
What if you like throw people off with your abrasiveness? I'm a very.
Are you confessing?
No, I do. I don't. Fact of life. I don't. I'm not gonna say I don't care, but like, I don't care to talk about whatever with people, and sometimes that's like. Or I'm also very like, hey guys, and they're like, oh, Jesus, you look at me censoring. How does that work? We're so proud. How does that work with like God? Because I guess that could be me being like a prideful person saying that it's okay for me to just be all like how I am.
I think
That makes
with,
sense.
yeah, I think there are depths to there is depth to knowing someone. So like, I know Lacey way better than I know whoever.
Oh.
You're like, somebody's actually standing there.
Yeah. Why?
Like, oh my God. And so I think I think getting to know someone is a process of exploration. And I think it is, I have a friend who was a lot the first time I met him. Oh my God. It was like his personality just punched you in the face. And I was like I was almost like traumatized by it. Like, and so I think there's an appropriate level of like, there's a level of consideration with meeting people new and understanding like, oh, sometimes I can be a lot. Like, okay, let me dial it back a little bit and figure out what they're okay with, where their kind of boundaries are. And I think as you get to know somebody like that, eventually they get to see more of you.
I'm not even glad the entire time I appreciate that.
Wow. Yeah.
No, like I'm used to blunt people, so I know it's funny.
Right.
I'm like, we should.
Right. And that's like, right, based off of your past experiences, that was like a totally fine thing to do.
Yeah.
one of
I can
Lacey's,
use all kinds of.
Yeah.
people,
Well,
you know
one
what
of-
I'm saying? Like.
one of Lacey's dad's friends, his mom. Like, before she even, like, the first thing she did was threaten me. And then continued to threaten me and exclusively threatened me. And I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, I think by flipping our focus on the other person, I think we start to be able to figure out and navigate that. Or like, oh, okay, like. Cool. Some people may appreciate being threatened. Some people may not appreciate being threatened. Let me like figure out which person they are before I threaten them, you know?
Some people may take that threat very seriously.
So, yeah, anybody else have last thoughts?
I think a roadblock that I can get into is that I can deal with. So one of the more common roadblocks is like, I like feel similar to an abrasiveness is like, I can just be real comfortable with like people. And to the point to where like, I will get up in your face, not in like a weird, like, I'm gonna fight you, but like, in a weird, like, no. Like, not in a weird, I'm gonna fight you, but in a weird, like, weird, like, I'm just like, I don't, like, it's like a running joke. It's like a running joke. I don't know.
I was here for it and then I wasn't.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to.
You think you go to a lot of things. Ask.
He does.
Miles.
Me and Jake were on this close.
Anyway, so, yeah, so that's the,
I think the roadblock I guess is. I think that I can at some level read and understand where people are, but I think that comes back in a bad way where it's like. Some people I just don't, and like, I won't know when to pick up cues and like to not do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's my roadblock. I need to just be better at like. Slowing down and like, playing it cool and.
Boundaries.
yeah, yeah, it's like, a slow, right, like slowly warming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Nico, did you have anything?
No, man, I'm good at all this.
Thank you for exposing your pride.
So humility.
Yeah. Well, cool, sweet. In terms of announcements, this what? Okay. Fire away.
So it has to do, so like with, I guess being abrupt, right? Like everyone's personality is different, right?
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on, even if somebody comes off threatening or whatever, right? I feel like if the person really wanted to know more, they wouldn't just judge it off of that one experience. Like they would dive deeper. You know, obviously, before I even met any of you guys, I was invited here by Lauren. And then it's just one of those things where you have to get to know the group as a whole.
Mhm.
So you don't necessarily judge it off of just one experience with one person.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
I think depending on where people are at, if somebody is, I want to know who God is, then yeah, somebody threatening them may not, it's whatever. And I think depending on how sensitive somebody is,
Yeah.
if somebody never heard like a negative thing said about them in their life, and all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, hey, you really suck at this. That's gonna be,
To be fair, my negativity comes
You did good. You.
Don't feel attacked. Listen, don't be defensive, okay? But I think the reality is not everybody's there. Not everybody is at a spot where they're like, I want to know who God is. And so I think that's the further away from God they are, the more easily they're gonna take something like that and write off God's kindness because of, some small, and so that's kind of the point of the starting with showing acts of kindness is that we start with something real small, something that like you can't even. Sure, you can be irritated that somebody stopped you to hand you a water bottle on a hot day, but let's be honest, like, it's not like the majority of people are gonna take that and appreciate that. And so it's by doing that, we're starting with small things that move them towards God until we get to start to build a relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the first thing that will judge you on is your character.
Right.
So they'll see that your character is based around, just being an ultimately kind of person, even if it is for no reason.
Right.
They'll be like, I want to learn more about that. Like, I want to do that.
Yeah. And I think for us as well, understanding that we're talking about threatening people as a joke.
Yeah.
In the context of a joke, but not everybody takes that as a joke. And so it's like understanding that there's room for misinterpretation of our humor. And so, okay, I make dead body jokes and drug jokes. I make drug jokes in front of people who understand that I'm joking about it. Yes, yeah, I'm joking about my jokes, my drug jokes, but like if I make them with people that I just meet, they're gonna think I'm a drug addict, like, and I can't be upset at them assuming that because they have no basis for ever thinking anything different, right? And so I think it's meeting people where they're at and understanding what's appropriate for the relationship. Like, you two can threaten each other all you want. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But like, versus I think somebody coming to church for the first time, don't threaten them. Like, they're not gonna get it.
Hold on, I didn't write in that church. I
I'm
wrote
not-
in that. We were outside.
Yeah.
We were
In the dark.
Wait. Yeah. Quarterback is like, I'm gonna kill you.
Turn into Batman.
So in terms of announcements, church this Sunday is in Charleston at 10:30. Afterwards is the ladies' paint night, the paint party. It is $5. If you need the registration link, let me go. And the guys, we'll figure out something to do. Any of the guys that are,
I'll be there.
go, okay,
So,
cool. DJ?
Landon should be there, 'cause it looks like actually.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Top, are you gonna be there?
That's fine, I just want to make
You want to go ahead?
Eric.
It's the fact that they don't actually.
Alright, so we'll figure that out. Figure out. We'll go to, we'll find a spot to go. Other announcements, we have our Friendsgiving this Friday. Starts at 4, dinner at 6. Anything?
yeah,
Bro, is there anything that? Is there anything that we need to share? Any other announcements? Hey,
I had tallied up 17 people. I said cook for 20, but go ahead and cook for 25 because it looks like more people are being invited. Which is awesome. It's gonna be real cozy. So.
Jacob, your skills will come into play.
What? What's this?
There will be personal skills.
It'll play spades. Makes me love spades.
June, I mean, if that's probably, in June.
2 to 3 hours.
Other announcements, next week, there is no midweek, we won't be here because it's Thanksgiving, so have fun at Thanksgiving. And then the Sunday after that, we're doing a virtual service. Everybody will be traveling and everything. We will be exclusively on YouTube Live. And that's about it. That's all I got. So, yeah. Any other?